There are a lot of myths and misinformation about Laura's Law that create fear and doubt about AOT programs. In these excerpts from a recent statewide meeting of California Advocates, Carol Stanchfield, who is California's first AOT director, and Randall Hagar, who was deeply involved in the campaign to get Laura's Law passed, explain how clients are engaged and empowered to recover through AOT.
Voluntary services are not an alternative to AOT. AOT requires that voluntary services have already been offered and refused. Over and over again, they've been refused. So here we have to make a decision about, do we go forward? Yes, when the negative outcomes are so severe that risk of restricted placement is imminent. The court is a civil court. It's a closed court. The other thing to know is that a settlement agreement or a court order have the same weight. Sometimes people say, oh, yes, I'll do this. And other people say, no, I'm never going to do this. This doesn't apply to me. And then we have a contested hearing and we move forward. But the outcome generally, I think, in all of the individuals that we've supported in Nevada County, at least, there's only been one that has not resulted in a settlement or a court order. Clients are represented by counsel, and the process, again, the treatment empowers, the court intervention empowers people to make choices to improve overall health. And I think that's, once you've experienced the steps of empowerment and the choices that can start to be considered immediately with that person, I think that helps to motivate, these little steps of engagement that lead to recovery. So then the next one is medication. It may be part of the court order, individualized plan. Medications are not forced. They're never forced in an outpatient setting, but they can be court ordered. The treatment plan can say something like, you'll need to see the doctor at least once a month and follow the doctor's recommendations. So initially that doesn't always happen, but eventually it almost always happens. So almost all participants eventually take medication. The other thing about AOT in particular is the level of monitoring. That level of monitoring helps to create some scaffolding, a safety net, if you will, so that, as we see somebody maybe every day of the week, depending on if they have medication, if they have medication outreach, we have a lot of contact with clients and have a lot of ability to check in and be with them and support, different activities, essential needs that they have, and so on. So that kind of monitoring, along with the court monitoring, really strengthens and reinforces the ability to quickly make adjustments to the treatment, step in and support in a way that can support stabilization and prevent some emergencies. So the other part is empowerment, and I say this because we have seen this so much. I mean, being able to provide choices through the process promotes hope, and it empowers people to make a decision. Maybe they don't want to do this, but they're willing to do that. So, okay, we go with what people are willing to do. That's where we start. It empowers choice, and it helps to lead to recovery. It's not a panacea. But it does support the possibility of engaging some in treatment that would not otherwise be possible. And that's true. I mean, you can, and I did say kind of uh, to somebody not long ago with the argument that, well, we already have these voluntary, we'd rather see people volunteer. And I'm thinking about people I've worked with, and I said, and excuse me for saying this, but hell will freeze over before these people volunteer for services. It's just not going to happen. And so then what do we do? What do we do? Just say, oh, well, they don't want to while they suffer and things happen. People die from that kind of neglect or response. And we know that AOT saves lives and protects civil liberties. Due process happens throughout AOT, and I think it is alive and well in this process.
You always start out with the presumption that there's no need to use the power of the court. The black robe effect is very real. And we have some wonderful judges. And Carol, I know, has Judge Anderson in Nevada County, and there's no one who does it better. I mean, judges are guys in courtrooms. There's bailiffs with badges. They sit up on the dais. You're not allowed to approach the bench. There's this whole dignity of the law that is so evident in every single symbol in a courtroom that all kind of escalates together in helping people feel like there is a force that's there to help them. And if it's compassionate and if the treatment works, then they really benefit. But not to involve the court is to kind of take a three-legged stool and cut one leg out from under it. So you got to be prepared in a county to use the court. And again, I think the law is there to be used. It's part of the model to use the court. It's part of the model to use some of the options that you have in the court. Carol referenced the contested hearing, and that is, at the end of the day, that's where the court can actually say, okay, I hear you don't want to do this. Evidence has been given to me that says that you would benefit from an AOT order, but I want to hear your side of it. I know you're not wanting to go there, so tell me about that. And the court engages in that process. But at the end of the day, the court says, okay, well, I find the evidence is that you meet the criteria for the program. I think you would benefit from the program. I doubt whether you could be safe in the community without the program, and I'm going to order a treatment plan that's been presented, which you've had full, opportunity to help give input to. And if you don't have that, even for the contested hearing, you're just not using the full potential of the law. And then there's the voluntary settlement orders. I mean, there is a reluctance on the part of some counties to engage the courts to the extent that they don't even want to have the court sign off on a voluntary settlement. I mean, this is an agreement that you make as the client or consumer with your treatment team. And the court's there kind of watching in the background. You don't need to go to court. You don't need, it's not, you're not really contesting anything. There's not evidence and then counter evidence and then people to testify and then, the court saying, weighing in the balance, I find, make a formal finding and all that sort of, the trappings of the court. But there is a voluntary settlement order and, that's underutilized. And then the thing that, and I'm so glad that Carol and I have been thinking along the same lines. I think treatment fidelity is huge. If you get a treatment team and they come out to an AOT ordered client, and they show up and they say, well, I noticed you're in bed today. You're not really it doesn't feel like you really want to engage with me. Why don't I come back and see you tomorrow? And that's fine, except there's not, if that goes on day after day after day after day, I mean, the effort that you're putting into engagement from the treatment team side is very minimal. And if they're not doing it 5 days a week, 7 days a week, they're doing it 3 days a week, 2 days a week, the service intensity has just jumped off a cliff. And that's not good, for the client. And it's not the way the program was intended to be implemented. So, this is wrap around carrots, whatever it takes. When we wrote the original law, we said no more than 10 clients per member of the service team. We really want intensive services here.